On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse, we talk with an abuse survivor named Charly. And Charly was in a relationship with a gaslighting abuse recovery practitioner. It's a story of inconsistencies, trust, betrayal, being a fixer, smear campaigns, and professional boundaries. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. I am Brandon Chadwick, and with me today we have Charly. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you for asking. And if you want to be a guest like Charly is today, please do go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com, click on our guest form, fill out the form, press the submit button, and we'll go from there. We also have a support group at our website at narcissistapocalypse.com. Inside, you'll see that we have Zoom meetings every Wednesday night, Thursday afternoons, and Saturday nights. We also have forum boards for you to post on to get the validation that you need from survivors just like you. It is a wonderful group of people on there, and you can make a lot of friends too. So join our support group today. And we also have a newsletter that you can sign up for at our website where you get a free workbook every single week for a new survivor story that comes out. And you can sign up for the newsletter at narcissistapocalypse.com. And for today's story, we do have one content warning as we do discuss physical intimidation, and that is in this episode. And today's story is a little different from many of the survivor stories that we have on our show. So, Charly's not coming on to the show to talk about a long marriage today or a long relationship or control escalated over many years. She's going to be talking about what happened after she tried to get help. And after two painful relationships that Charly went through, she found someone online that presented themselves as a recovery practitioner for abuse. And this person seemed to understand everything that she had been through. And Charly worked with her professionally. And for a while, it felt like she had finally found a practitioner who got what she went through. But then the relationship crossed a line and it became personal, it became romantic, and slowly Charly found herself in a relationship with someone who already knew all of her wounds, her past, her trauma, everything that had been hurt about her in her life. And this story will then go into, unregulated recovery spaces, a lot of broken promises, repeated lies, blurred boundaries, smear campaigns. And this is a lot to deal with for anyone when you go to someone who is supposed to be this safe person. So it's a real big story of betrayal and how a victim can also be a victimizer and someone who just wanted complicity with no questions asked. But Charly really challenged everything, and that became a problem. And we've never really done an episode like this before. So a big thank you to Charly for being here as our guest today. And now I'm going to get out of my way and your way. Charly, the floor is now yours.
So I was raised in a very religious background. Some would call it cultish. I was raised a Jehovah's Witness. So that pretty much looking back on my life now, it kind of explains why I chose the relationships that I chose and why I stayed as long as I did, based on the doctrine that was taught to me as a very young child. They teach that love is long suffering, it is kind, it is patient, it is persevering, it is turn the other cheek. They hate a divorcing, so they hate any type of separation. Women are regarded as the lesser of the two, and there's that element as well. But it was a very, very isolating religion. We didn't really have much to do with the outside world other than going to school and then working outside the home. We didn't have friends outside of the church. We couldn't associate with people outside the religion. It was very much a very close knit, close guarded religion. My parents' relationship was, looking back as an adult, very toxic. There was a lot of breakups and getting back together. It was very much a power struggle. They were together for about 30 some years and broke up probably every couple of years and would get back together. And, I kind of saw that as a kid, and that was normal to me. Um, I was in that religion for 35 years and left it right around that time. I got married in that religion to another Jehovah's Witness. I was married very young. They teach abstinence, so typically people within that religion get married very young. I was 19. We were married for about 16 years. We had 2 children. It was a very non-toxic relationship. Looking back, it was he was he's a good guy. He's a great guy. We're still very good friends to this day. We just were going in different directions, and it ended very amicably. We co-parented very well together, but we were also both raised witnesses, so we had that in common. So he had the same experience that I did. I stayed single for a couple years after my divorce, and I always knew that I was a gay woman, but that had nothing to do with my divorce. It had nothing to do with our relationship. It never came up. Based on the way that I was raised as a witness, it was a sin. It was almost the worst sin was to be homosexual in any way. So I knew that I was always going to bury that. I was always going to keep that hidden. I was never going to do anything about that. So the marriage ended completely separate of that. And after a couple of years after the divorce, still no intention of living that lifestyle. I met a woman and it was a life changer. I mean, I knew that that's who I was. That was my authentic self. And I threw myself into that relationship. We were together for about 8 years. It was a very toxic relationship. And when I said earlier that I was very isolated, I had never heard of the words love bombing or trauma bond or gaslighting. None of the key words that are very hot today. I didn't know any of them, so I had no idea I was being love bombed. People telling you constantly that you were special, you were unique. I'll never find anybody like you. This love is very special. There's never going to be another love like this. When you never heard that or even knew that that existed, that was very, very intoxicating. So because of that, I stuck around. It was a typical relationship, trauma bond, gaslighting. I had been introduced to things that I wasn't introduced to, I didn't really know much about, like alcohol and drug abuse, things like that, because of living the life that I did, very isolated. We weren't around. You could drink as a witness, but you didn't get drunk, you didn't take drugs, you didn't smoke, you didn't go out to bars, you didn't do any of those things. And my first girlfriend was actually a bartender at a gay bar. So that was very much a culture shock for me. And I was not only dealing with that culture shock, I was dealing with the fact that I was coming out as a gay woman and still having a lot of guilt feelings about that because of how I was raised religiously. It was a tough time. It really was.
So we've had Jehovah Witnesses on the show before, and for you, were you shunned in any way? Is there shame going on? We've heard in previous stories with Jehovah Witnesses, there's a lot of fear going on. What if what they're saying is correct? So where are you with those things at this time, and where's your self-worth at this time, and you're learning who you are, so how do you feel about you and who you are and how you're going to move through this world at this point?
Yes, my conscience was always right in my face. It was very much fear-based religion. And I at that point was, you know, in that culture, it's Armageddon. And so, yeah, it was, I'm definitely going to die at Armageddon now, and it was, and my family didn't know. So this relationship was kept secret for a couple of years. My children didn't even know, but they were young at the time. And they were still very much and are still very much within the religion. So I knew that I was going to lose my family as well. I don't know if I would call it shame, but there was guilt. I never really felt shame. My self-confidence and my worth was okay. It was good. I felt very guilty about all of it. So yeah, it was a struggle for many years. It took probably, I would say, at least 8 to 10 years for me to get beyond the not having that in my face, that guilt, that tug, that draw of I'm doing something wrong here. It did go away, but it took a very, very long time. It's not an issue for me anymore.
So this relationship was 8 years long and then it ends. So how did that relationship end? How are you feeling after that? And then you do have a relationship with another abuser after that before we even get into the story of who we're going to be talking about today. So kind of walk us through that part of your life.
So that relationship, like I said, there was a lot of breakups and getting back together, that kind of thing. But at the end of that relationship, it ended with infidelity on her part, and we parted ways. So after that relationship ended, I went to a therapist, and it was, I don't know, a couple months or 2, 3 months later. Um, I wasn't looking for a relationship, wasn't looking for anything, and someone came into my life, and I knew it was a rebound from the very beginning, and we started dating, and it helped. It helped to get my mind off of that situation, which is what a rebound relationship is. She quickly became very enmeshed in my family and with my kids, with me. She owned her own business, so she hired my daughter. I actually started working for her at one point. She got very close to my son. It got very, very intertwined in my life, to the point where when I wanted to leave, which was very early on, it wasn't just going to affect me. If I left, my daughter would lose her job. My son would no longer have this individual that he was very close to. I mean, there were so many factors. And so I, again, with my upbringing, it's patient, it's kind, it's all of these things. You tolerate, you see this person with her. She had a lot of issues, and she would say things to me like, you make me a better person, you help me, this and that. So I was trying to fix her. I was trying to help to show her, you can be better. You don't have to lie about things. You don't have to gaslight me, all these things. And I stuck around, and we could continue to get more meshed in each other's lives. And all of the things that I dealt with in my first relationship were present again, but a little worse this time. There was much more alcohol abuse, there was much more drug abuse. She had gone into a mental treatment hospital, all of these things. And I was just trying to help her through it. I thought, you can just love a person enough that this is all they need, is just to be loved. And that relationship lasted 12 years. And it ended pretty badly. There was never any physical abuse or anything like that, but again, it ended in infidelity on her part. And at that point, anybody that I talked to, as far as a therapist, they're just going to give you the same advice they would give to a breakup that is not abuse based. And it's not the same. It's completely different worlds. You just feel very frustrated when you walk out of that office, because it's like they just don't get it. And when you talk to your friends, if they haven't been through that kind of relationship, they just don't get it. And I was very frustrated, and I was on social media after this, and this woman was on there, and she was talking about her relationship with a narcissist. And so I pretty much binge watched all of her videos, and I felt like she went through the same thing I did. And she was offering her services, kind of like a glorified coach, life coach kind of thing. Um, they're not supposed to really deal with therapy. So I'd reached out to her, and we started talking. I asked about her services, and she told me. So we ended up working together professionally. So at that point, talking to someone that had gone through the same thing that I went through was very helpful. It was very therapeutic. It just felt like I finally was talking to somebody that understood. And at the end of that, I felt that I was okay. I'm okay. Because at the end of it, I felt like we were just chatting. We were just two people talking. I didn't really feel like it was professional anymore. We were just shooting the shit, basically. So we stopped working together professionally. Um, so after that, we continued to, she would text me, how you doing, that kind of thing. We would text, and then we would text a lot, and then we started talking on the phone. Not professionally, it was just all very personal at this point. And we did that for a couple of months, and then we decided to meet. And so we met, and long story short, we ended up, our professional relationship went into a romantic relationship.
So right here, this is the person that this story is about. And if this person was a licensed therapist, their licensing would be taken away at this point. But we're dealing with someone in a very unlicensed business. The ethics here have been quite violated. So you're already dealing here with someone who's willing to violate these unwritten rules for them. And you're dealing with someone who has just learned everything about you. So, right here, what's this initial stage of this relationship like? And obviously, they want to be perceived as this helpful person who's also a victim. But you start to learn about how they were raised and who they were and like where they slotted in their family and kind of everything about that. And if so, tell us about that as well in this part.
What I know about, so in the beginning, because I knew her story because it was out there on TikTok, um, I understood or had some understanding about what she came from. I understood that she was a victim, like you say. I do believe that she was. I believe that, um, knowing her like I do now, I don't believe all of the things that she has said has happened, but I do believe that enough of the things that she said happened to make her, a victim. I know that she is very much broken because of that. Her childhood, I know that she did not have a relationship with her biological father until she was probably a teenager, and even then, it wasn't a relationship. It was basically just a meeting. I think there was a lot of things that happened in her childhood that I'm not real comfortable talking about just because it's not my story to tell. But there was definitely some trauma in her childhood and her teenage adulthood. I mean, there was a lot of things that happened in her life that would make me understand why she made the choices that she did in life and all of those things. So it started off. It was always very much a slow burn because I knew neither of us were looking for a relationship. We weren't looking to get together with anybody. Neither of us were looking for that. So neither of us were really looking to move fast, or so it was very much a slow process. And we very much communicated that to each other that let's just hang out, let's see where it goes. There was a lot of triggers on both sides of us. So it took a long time for us to really get to know each other and understand each other's triggers, things like that. There was a 2-hour distance between us. So um, there was just so much inconsistency on her part, made a lot of empty promises, little things like I'm gonna come down this weekend, and 9 times out of 10 she not only wouldn't come down, it just would never even get talked about again. So I wasn't really sure she was ready for a relationship. So we talked about that a lot. We communicated really well. I mean, we had the tools to talk to each other, and really hear each other. And I felt like in the beginning that it felt really nice to be able to be heard and for her to be heard and to be understanding and be aware, all the self-awareness was going on. But the language was there, but the behavior was not. It was all just language, you know, uh, saying exactly what she thought needed to be said, but then when it came time to back it up with behavior, that just never presented itself. So I would say almost every weekend there were plans being made where she would come down, but when it came down to that Friday where she was going to leave, it was never even discussed again. She wouldn't show up or something would come up. There were so many inconsistencies with this relationship. It was so mentally and emotionally exhausting that it got to the point where we talked about it and I said, listen, I don't think this is going to work. I don't feel that you're emotionally ready for whatever this is. I said, so why don't we just be friends, and just see where that goes. And there's a lot of pushback on that. Just be patient with me. I'm just, I didn't see this coming, all of the words again. But again, getting her to spend time together in the same space, it just never happened. And there were inconsistencies with her work schedule. She would say that she's not going to be working this weekend. That if I was going to go up on a Friday, she would say, "Okay, well, I'm not going to work that weekend then." Well, I would get up there, and then all of a sudden she's like, "Well, I do have to go to work." I mean, it was just, there was never any real honesty, even with the little things. It was definitely a roller coaster ride. And even after I would say to her, "Listen, this isn't working for me. I just don't feel that you're ready." She would say, "Oh, yes, I am. I am. Just, be patient," kind of thing. But still, it just kept, the inconsistencies just were always there. It just kept happening. And then there was the lies. It was, at first, it was, I didn't really question anything. I just took her for her word. But then it got to the point where it was, when I did start to question things, then that's when things became an issue. And an example I can give is that she had told me that she had a Jeep. And the very first day that I met her, that we met, I was driving her to her car after a game that we watched together. And I said, "Oh, where's your Jeep?" And she goes, "Oh, I have my daughter's car." And she said, "My daughter has my Jeep because of the weather. This is winter." And I'm like, "Okay." Um, and then so when she would talk about coming down to meet me, she would say, "I need to borrow my daughter's car because my Jeep is now in the shop." And so that became an issue. She couldn't come down because her daughter needed her car. And then she said that she physically misplaced, lost her license. And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, just go get one." She goes, "Well, it's an out-of-state license." And she gave me this big story. I'm like, "Okay." A couple months go by, and I'm like, "Why haven't you just gone and gotten another license?" And she gave me the same story. And I'm like, "This isn't making any sense to me. I feel like, you're not being completely honest here." And she said some few choice words to me, and we ended up breaking up over it. And I'm like, "Okay, all right." So she reached out a few days later and she said, "I want to come down and talk to you. And there's some things I need to tell you." Okay. So she comes down and she says, "My license is suspended." And she told me that she was on the title with her ex for this particular vehicle in this other state, and her ex didn't turn the plates in. Therefore, they suspended her license. And I know that that's a thing in some states. It happens. Um, so I was like, "Oh, okay, what are you going to do about it?" She goes, "Well, I have to do this legally." And so she had to hire a lawyer and spend thousands and 10,000s and all this money to get her name off this title. And then she still couldn't get her license because the DMV still had fees. It was always something. It was always something. Come to find out after this relationship ended that none of that was true. None of it was true. She was never on the lease with her ex. She never had a black Jeep. Her license was suspended. And I don't want to say why it was suspended, but it was suspended. And so the whole time we were together, I was being lied to about that and many other things. But that was such a source of conflict between us, the transportation, that she continued to just lie upon lie upon lie upon lie. And that was pretty much the gist of our relationship. Inconsistencies, lies. She knew that I had some trust issues based on how my previous relationships have ended. And so she would continue to gaslight me about that. She would say things to me like, "Our issues in this relationship is because of your trust issues." And I'm like, I okay, I don't know how that's possible, but it wasn't the issue that she was lying to me or all these other things that she was doing with this relationship. It was my trust issues. And so she really prayed hard on that.
So, just to point out right here, you are catching her in these lies. She's inconsistent. And when you challenge it, she then does something that isn't right. She was weaponizing the information of your previous relationship that she knew all about, not just as a partner, but as a professional to use against you. This is a kernel of truth that is going on here, too. And many survivors would have believed it. but you didn't. So how did you handle this?
In other areas where I should have had some trust issues, like all hours of the night, people would be calling her, men would be calling her, women would be calling her. And these were men and women that these people had an interest in her. I didn't have any issues with that. So my trust issues was never an issue in that aspect. Like, I trusted her in the sense that I didn't think she would ever cheat on me, that she wasn't cheating on me. I had no problem with her going out with her friends. None of what you would think would be my trust issues. So she was trying to say that those trust issues were an issue in our relationship, but it was because she was lying to me.
So there's these push pulls that are ongoing, these back and forths that are ongoing with the lying, inconsistencies, the gaslighting, and being told that your trust issues are the problem. Just these things just keep on happening, and you try to break up with her, but you do come back. So from here, what other issues are occurring?
So within that relationship, there was also a lot of alcohol abuse, and more so than my previous relationship, who I thought that relationship that she drank a lot. But once I got together with this person, her drinking was quite extensive. So as we were dating, like I said, her job was, the practitioner. And there was just a lot of ethical boundaries being crossed. There was, of course, the fact that she was in a relationship with me. And then as far as her clients, she worked from home, but if I was here, there wasn't a lot of privacy. So I would go in the other room, but there were times where we were in the car and she would hold sessions in the car. So I was present for that. There were gifts being sent to her from her clients. There was a trip that was taken with one of her clients. A lot of things that if she had been under a profession where you need a license to do this, she would have lost her license. There were so many ethical boundaries being crossed. And with her being a practitioner, it's all very self-regulated. There are a few organizations out there that you can be affiliated with that I could report her to, but she's not a member of any of those organizations. And you don't have to be a practitioner. You basically can get your certification online, or you can go and do it at a particular facility. It's kind of up to the person. I have tried to find uh, her certification through these organizations, and I cannot find any paper trail that she's even certified. If I had to do this all over again, I would have vetted her. I would have asked for certification. I would have asked for proof. Never even occurred to me to do so, but I wish that I had. And I hope that if anything comes out of this podcast, it is that for people that are on social media and they're using people that offer their services to try and get some certification, to try to get some proof that they are really who they say they are. It's very much a regret of mine. Um, so as much as I have tried to find a place where I could report her for ethical violations, there is nothing, there is nowhere for me to go with that.
So I guess my question here for you is, what are these types of things that they're really needing from you that you're giving them?
Well, I think that was part of the problem. I don't think I was giving them what they needed, which she didn't need, because her clients gave her all the validation that she could possibly want, need. She told me many times, that her clients help her way more than she helps them. She told me in the beginning, she said, listen, I'm going to need you to keep me grounded, because my clients, it all might just go to my head. So I don't think that, I think that was, like I said, part of the problem. I wasn't giving her uh, the validation that she needed. Um, I was just being normal validation you give in a relationship, but it's never enough.
And while you were a client of hers, were you giving her validation?
I'm sure that I was, because again, I had never been able to talk to somebody that I felt understood where I was coming from. So I was very appreciative of that. And yeah, 100% I was giving her the validation as a client. She just needs validation from outside people. And that's where she got it from her clients. She needed it. It was like air to her. And it did create a huge ego on her part. I think that had I not questioned her, had I just sat back and did what I normally did, just be very patient, take her at her word, basically comply to all the inconsistencies, we'd still be together. The problem came when I started to question her about things that did not make sense to me. And she did not like that. And so that was our issue. That is when the pushback got really, really strong. Her self-worth was always very low. And when you have a person that has very, very low self-esteem, and all of a sudden you're being told day in and day out how wonderful you are and how good you are and how much you're helping me and you're so smart, all those things that her clients are telling her, that is going to be explosive to a person that has no self-worth.
So what's keeping you in this relationship during this time, specifically, let's say in the middle to like the 3/4 part of it? Like, what are you getting out of it, and what's making you happy within this at the time, or and then what's keeping you?
Looking back on it now, based on what I knew about her and her past and her childhood, her everything that she had been through, I really looked at her as being very, very broken. And I wanted to help fix her. I wanted to show her, because, based on what she had told me, it didn't sound like she was ever in a relationship where she was loved in a healthy way. And I wanted to show her that. I wanted to show her what it looked like to be in a relationship where you were loved in a healthy way. And I continued to show up for that. And I continued to show her that, hoping that one day she would see it and think, oh, okay, well, this is what it's supposed to be like. And that's why I stuck around. I was trying to fix her. And it just never works. And that was the same in all of my relationships, is that you want to show them something better. Not that I'm better, but that what you bring to the table as far as honesty and loyalty and all the things that make up a good relationship. When you bring that relationship can be really, really healthy and really good. And I was just trying to show her that. And that's why I stayed. I was just trying to fix her.
So how does this relationship end?
So towards the end of the relationship, I started to notice that she wasn't being really secretive, not secretive, but she wasn't trying to hide the lies anymore. Like, she was blatantly behaving in a way that um, because she knew so much about me, because we worked together professionally, she knew everything about me. She knew about things that happened in my childhood, the trauma, the sexual trauma, all about my past relationships, what my ex-partners had done to me, and which specific things they had done to me hurt me the most. She knew all of these things. So at the end of this relationship, those are the things that she went to. She escalated her drinking. She was not even trying to hide the lying anymore. Her inconsistencies were even bigger than before. So at the end of it, I felt that this is probably where I didn't really see it going much further. And how it ended was that it was actually a day before our 1 year anniversary. I was up at her place and we had gone out to dinner, and she said something that was not true. And typically I didn't really call her out on stuff. I just kind of was like, yeah, okay, well, whatever. But for some reason, I felt compelled to call her out on this. And as soon as I did, she got very upset. She tried to prove to me that what she's saying was true and that the evidence just wasn't there. She got up from the table, because we were at a restaurant, She got up on the table and she went and she left. She just walked out of the restaurant and went and stood up by the car. So I paid the bill. I went out to the car. We got in the car and she immediately started up again. And I just kept saying, well, that's simply not true what you're saying. And then she attacked me verbally. And I can't really remember specifically what she was saying. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna probably go home tonight, which is 2 hours away. And I stopped talking. And she goes, why did you stop talking? I said, let's just not talk right now. It's just too volatile of a situation. Get back to her place. I go to get my things, and she said, are you leaving? And I said, yes, I think that we need some space. And I was holding something in my hand. And at this point, there had never been any physical abuse or anything like that. She took what I was holding in my hand and she threw it down onto her table. And in my mind, I thought, okay, I need to get out of here because I knew that there had been physical abuse in her previous relationships. She had told me that her ex had been abusive with her. So I knew that she came from a world where that was the norm based on what she had told me. So in my mind, I'm like, I've got to get out of here. I go and get my things out of the bathroom. I come out. She's still yelling. And to this day, I couldn't tell you what she was saying because I wasn't listening. I just wanted to get out of the place. She took my stuff that I had in my hand again and she threw it into the kitchen. And my suitcase was on the floor. And I bent down and was getting my suitcase together. She was taking things out of my suitcase. I finally got my suitcase closed and she kicked it across the room. And the whole time she's yelling at me, I stood up and she backed up against the wall and she was, oh, you want to hit me, don't you? And I didn't even say anything. I actually felt pretty bad for her at that point because I thought this is probably what has happened to her in the past. Somebody may have hit her. And I went over to pick up my suitcase and she sat on it. And I said, I really need you to get off my suitcase. I want to leave. And she wouldn't. And I said, okay, I'm going to call. And I mentioned her best friend's name. And she immediately got up, she took my suitcase and she put it out by the door. And I left. And I drove home. And I come to find out, she went and told her children and her friends I had put my hands on her, that I had been physical with her. I can't really tell you what that did to me because I've never in my life done that. And it destroyed me. It really, truly did. She proceeded to text me and tell me that she had communicated with my ex, the ex that I had come to her to heal from. So now everything that I had ever told her about me, my relationships, my ex in particular, she was now speaking to that person. And she proceeded to tell me that she does not believe anything I ever told her when we're working together professionally. And I mean, it was just an awful, awful conversation. I told her to never call or text me again. And we have not spoken since. And that was about 5 months ago.
So after that happens, which then becomes the ultimate violation, what happens to you internally here on how you deal with that? Because you came to this person as this trusted person, and then they then went over top here and is now in cahoots with your ex who was abusive. So, where does that leave you, and how is your like day to day? What happened to you after this?
You get really, really numb. And I emotionally, I was just numb. And I'm not going to say it destroyed me because it didn't, and it probably should have. But, I have been betrayed in the past by so many people that this is just another betrayal. And what makes this situation different is the fact that she is supposed to be in a position of helping people. That's what made this situation so different. In my previous relationships, I walked away quietly. I disappeared. I got very quiet. This situation is different because this person should not be doing what she's doing professionally. And I'm not going to say that I was okay. It took me a long time to get okay and to not be angry. And I had to wait until I got to this point where I wasn't angry anymore to be able to talk about it, because I didn't want any anger inside me while I'm telling this story. I was ruminating on the fact that there should be consequences for what she did. Not ruminating about the relationship or the end of the relationship or missing her. None of that rumination. I mean, I think at the end of all of this, the gist of it is that you have to really vet people. Anybody can get on these social medias and say there's something, and you pay them thinking that you're going to get help. And maybe you do. And I'll be honest with you. Like I said, I heard conversations that she's had with her clients, and she was very good at what she did. And I'm not saying that she wasn't a victim. I truly do believe that her relationships in the past, and I only say I believe this because I heard other people talking about it. I question everything she ever told me, but because there's been outsiders who have told me that this has happened, I do believe that she was a victim. I do believe that she was also a victimizer based on what I saw, how she came at me, and what she did to me. She was not a victim all the time. So people just have to be really careful who they get to help them through really, really tough times. It's just really important.
And if you had any other words of wisdom for everyone listening, what would they be?
The longer you try, the more you're going to lose yourself. And you will lose yourself, for sure.
Well, Charly, I really want to thank you for being here today, sharing your story. And I'm sorry that this happened to you, with this trusted person. And I'm really happy you came on here so we could discuss this. We've never discussed anything like this before on the show. I'm just happy that you're out, that you're doing better. And just really a big thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you so much for allowing me to use this platform to get my story out there.
Well, Charly, thank you once again for being a guest on our show. And if you want to be a guest like Charly was today, please do go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com. Click on the guest form, fill out the form, press the submit button, and we will go from there. Also, we have a support group, and you can click on our support group button at narcissistapocalypse.com. Inside, you'll see that we have Zoom meetings every Wednesday nights, Thursday afternoons, and Saturday nights. And we have forum boards for you to post on to get the validation that you need from survivors just like you. So join our support group today. And we also have a newsletter at our website where you get a free workbook for every new episode, Survivor Story episode that comes out. So join our newsletter today, and that is at narcissistapocalypse.com. And that is it for today's Survivor Story, today's episode. So for myself and Charly, we hope you have a good night.